Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And thank you. And this coming week's Parsha is Shlach Lecha. And it's hard to believe that over the course of the years, we are actually coming to the end of this Parsha. There's the maftir right there. So, of course, the last part of this parsha deals with the Mekoshesh, the one who was gathering sticks on the Shabbat. And the fact that this is a violation of the Shabbat, to go and gather these sticks, was doing work. It was considered a melacha, one of the 39 forbidden labors on the Shabbat. And they had warned him, and he had done what he still continued to gather the sticks. And by the way, there is a tradition, I believe, that the person who was doing it, even though he's unnamed here, the tradition is that this was Tzlofchad, and he is the gentleman who had the daughters, the 5 daughters, who came to Moses regarding inheritance because their father died without a son to inherit. So a situation, by the way, of oral Torah, you might say, which is, of course, based on circumstances. So we had ended with 35, which was Vayomer Hashem Moshe. God, the Lord said to Moses, Hashem said to Moses, Mot Yumat Ha'ish, the man is indeed deserving of a capital punishment. He shall be put to death. Ragom oto ba'avanim kol ha'eda, the entire community will stone him with stones, michutz la'machaneh, outside of the camp. There were 4 kinds of death penalty, and there was strangulation, there was decapitation, there was burning, and there was stoning. And stoning and burning are, of course, extreme forms. The thing is that one needs to understand that the tradition explains that these were all immediate, and essentially what preceded any of them was strangulation, so that the person themselves never, when these things, if they ever actually were put into practice, the person wouldn't even be conscious when this was happening. And stoning wasn't being pelted with stones. Stoning was essentially, to describe it, of course, is not pleasant, but essentially the person was essentially strangled to begin with, and that would take place by putting a cloth around and a rope of kind, and the people who witnessed and accused him, the person of the offense, the capital offense, were the ones who had to pull on that rope to strangulate him. And I think this was all in an attempt to prevent people from doing this wholesale, to know that if you accuse someone of this, you were going to have to do it as well. And then he would be thrown over the side of a cliff that was like maybe a certain minimum depth, and then a large stone would be dropped on this person. And that was stoning. Again, not like being pelted, which of course would be, it would take time and would be painful, etc. So the idea of putting a person to death was to be done as painlessly as possible. That was the idea of this. I won't explain burning now, but again, essentially it wasn't putting someone onto a fire. That was not the way it was done. Again, person being strangled and unconscious when this would be done. So, okay. So here we go. Vayatziu oto, right? They will take him out. They should take him out. Kol ha'eda el michutz la'machaneh. So what this is actually a past tense. That is, kol ha'eda, the entire community, took him out to outside the camp. Vayirgemu oto ba'avanim ba'vayamot, and they stoned him, and so that he died. Kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe, just as Hashem had commanded Moses. And Vayotziu Uto, there's the Rashi there. Mikan, the fact that they took him out, we learn Shebeit Haskila, literally the location where the stoning was done, Chutz, was outside the city, Varachok mi Beit Din, and it was a distance from the court. And the idea is mentioned in Sanhedrin, there's the reference there. And the need to do that was that in case this person could think of something and he could say to them, oh, I just thought of something that would prove my innocence, they would take him back to the court. They wanted to be very deliberate in this procedure. We know for a fact that there have been cases where there's capital punishment, where subsequently it was discovered that the person who was put to death was actually innocent, and the court wanted to make sure that there were safeguards, any kind of safeguard in place to make sure that this person wasn't put to death, and didn't without deserving it. So just to fill in a little bit of the space there. So we now go to a very famous passage, and this is the passage which is the third paragraph in the Shema. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor. The Lord said to Moses to say, Daber el bnei Israel, speak to the children of Israel, va'amarta lahem, and say to them, va'asu lahem tzitzit, they should make for themselves fringes. Fringes? Al kanfei vigdehem ledoratam, on the corners of their garments for all generations. So there are some mitzvot that can no longer be practiced. For example, the mitzvot involving sacrifices and the temple worship. There are certain mitzvot, a whole category of mitzvot that are agricultural mitzvot and depend on living in the land of Israel. And so where Jews are living in the land of Israel now, they're able to perform these mitzvot. But if you're living outside the land of Israel, you do not have that opportunity. However, we're being told here that the idea of putting fringes on the corners of our garments is a timeless mitzvah. It's any time and any place where you are. Are there exceptions? There may well be certain exceptions. For example, in terms of time, we'll see. The time for putting on tzitzit is during the daytime, in daylight. But you understand the point that I'm making, though, essentially. V'natnu al tzitzit haknaf, and they should place on the fringe of the corner, til tchelet, a thread of blue. So let's take a look at Rashi here. V'asu lahem tzitzit, right? They should make fringes for themselves. Al shem haptilim hatluyim. This garment or these tzitzit, are there. They're named tzitzit. Al shem haptilim. This is based on the threads hatluyim that hang that are hanging in it. So in other words, the garment is called tzitzit, but it's based on the fringes, right? Kamo vayikachenu b'tzitzit roshi. There's a verse in Ezekiel chapter 8 that says, he took me by the fringes of my head, referring, of course, to the locks of hair. Davar acher, another interpretation, tzitzit. So this word tzitzit actually has, Rashi's going to tell us, is actually a play on words as well. Al shem uritem oto. That's because this mitzvah is going to go on to say, and you shall look at it. Kamo. And the word latzitz, he's going to give us an example, means to peek at something, to look at something. Here we go. Matzitz or mitzitz hacharachim, min hacharachim, who peeks out from the cracks, peeks through the cracks. And then tchelet, this color, and this is in the tractate Menachot in the Mishnah. or in the Gemara, page 44, Tseva Yarok. So this word Yarok in modern Hebrew it means green, but he does in this fact, it really has to do with the dye of shel chilazon. Chilazon was a certain type of snail, oceanic snail, that produced a certain dye. I'm not absolutely certain, but it could well be Tyrian dye, this purple color, this intense blue purple color. So Yarok really isn't, the modern term for Yarok doesn't correspond to Rashi's term for Yarok or the term in Menachot. So it's called tzitzit for two reasons. One is because they are fringes, and the fact is that we are supposed to peek at them. We're supposed to look at them. Going on. And they shall be for you as fringes or tzitzit to maybe peek at, right? They shall be objects to be looked at. Ritemoto, and you shall look at them, you should see them. Ritem. Okay, so there's a lot of Torah Tmima. Uzachartem et kol mitzvot Hashem, so that you remember all the commandments of Hashem. Va'asitem otam, so that you perform them. V'lo taturu acharei levachem, so that you do not go astray, you do not wander away, following your hearts, v'acharei enechem, and following your eyes, asher atem, through which zonim acharehem, you can go astray after them. So again, we know certainly men in general are very much influenced by what they see, and this is a protection and a safeguard, not obviously to go after unchaste and immoral behavior based on the stimulation of the eyes and the fact that the heart, right, is panting away and beating away and tempting a person to do something that's inappropriate. So it's interesting that that these reminders are there to help us. And I was just reading an article by the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, chief rabbi of England, and he talked about experiments that have been performed lately, relatively recently, which show that if someone is reminded of something, they may in fact behave. It'll affect their behavior. He starts off the article by talking about a situation where you're driving a little over the speed limit and you see a cop car right behind you, and you automatically slow down to within the speed limit. Just from the fact that you see the police car. And I actually know that there are times when they will simply leave police cars unattended in certain areas, and it tends to affect the traffic quite well. Excuse me 1 second. And he then goes on to show other experiments where, in cases where people were made aware, even subliminally, it affected their behavior in a positive sense. And they would be more generous or not cheat or things like that. So he gives an example of a coffee machine where they put it in a hallway, and in some cases, they had a poster of a pair of eyes right above the coffee machine. And I guess people were allowed to volunteer to pay for the coffee or not. And they had another situation where they had a picture of a vase of flowers above the coffee machine. And they found that there was a measurable factor at which people cheated with the vase of flowers as opposed to the pair of eyes. I'm not even sure if they found that people didn't cheat at all when they saw the pair of eyes. So, et kol mitzvot Hashem. You shall remember all the commandments of Hashem. Sheminyan Gematria Shel Tzitzit. He says that if you count up the numerical value of the letters of tzitzit, so tzaddik is 90, yod is 10, so that's 100 plus another 100 plus taf, which is 400, you get to shesh ma'ot. You get 600, the number 600. Ushmona chutim, and each fringe has 8 threads. V'chamisha ksharim, and 5 knots. Hare, so that's 8 and 5, another 13. So Taryag, you have 613. And of course, that is the classic number of positive and negative commandments that we're given. So that's how the fringe themselves, plus the word tzitzit, adds up to remembering all the commandments in these various symbolic ways. So v'lo taturu acharei levachem, so that you do not wander or go and after your hearts. Kamo mitur haaretz. This is example of the wording that was used at the beginning of this parsha, where Moses sent spies to, and he uses the word mitur haaretz. In other words, to spy out the land. And so, of course, this is being done sub rosa. In other words, the idea of spies don't usually do their work in the open. They don't really want people to know what they're up to. Okay, so this also has to do with a person's dark side. Halev va'einaim hem meraglim. He says the heart and the eyes, they are spies laguf, for the body. Umisarsarim lo et ha'averot ha'ayin et ha'averot. And I think the word misarsarim could mean that that it confuses him regarding transgressions. Ha'ayin ro'eh, the eye sees, v'halev chomed, and the heart covets. V'haguf oseh et ha'avirot, and consequently the body then performs the transgressions. So it's a little lesson in basic human psychology here. Ulama'an tizkaru, so that you remember, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, and perform all my mitzvot, all my commandments, v'yitem kadoshim l'Elohechem, and you shall be holy to your God. You shall be kadoshim also here, meaning sanctified, devoted, etc. Right? So we are going to stop right here, and we'll continue tomorrow, God willing, with this. So do any of you want to say anything for the record? Or should I say either of you want to say anything for the record?
I don't think so.
Okay, very good. So we'll stop the recording.